Good evening, Erev Tov. It's so nice to be with you. I've been thinking lately about the idea of inevitability, the notion that certain things are just bound to happen, that there's nothing we can do to change an outcome. I hear people saying things like, it's inevitable that somebody in my family will catch COVID, or inevitably the kids' school will shut down again. Or next week, inevitably, we'll see violence in the streets in the wake of the election. Not only do I hear people in my life make statements like these, but sometimes I find myself thinking and even saying them too. Here's the thing though, the notion that events happen to us, that we lack the ability to influence them, is really antithetical to our Jewish faith. Take Abraham and Sarah. This week we read in Torah of how God instructed them saying, Lech lecha, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. In other words, leave behind everything that you have ever known. Begin a new journey that will lead you in a promising new direction. I wonder how many of us would have heeded God's call had we been Abraham and Sarah. It's nice to imagine that we would have, but most of us actually shy away from change. And even more than that, we tell ourselves that we lack agency. We don't say it outright. Instead, we say things like, I wish I had a clean house, but I'm just too busy. Or, the injustice in our society is terrible, but what can I really do about it? It's really hard for us to see a way that's different than the one we know. It's also hard to grasp that it's within our power to start a new journey. Lori Gottlieb, the psychotherapist and writer, speaks about this in terms of circumstances and stories. She explains, we assume that our circumstances shape our stories, but what I found time and again in my work is that the exact opposite happens. The way we narrate our lives shapes what they become. That's the danger of our stories because they can really mess us up, but it's also their power. Because what it means is that if we can change our stories, then we can change our lives. Recall the midrash about Abraham smashing his father's idols. You know the one. Abraham's father owned an idol shop. One day he left Abraham to tend the shop while he was gone. Abraham smashed all of the idols but one. When his father returned, he asked, what happened? Abraham explained that the idol that was left had smashed all of the others. How could that be? His father proclaimed. It's just a statue. Aha, said Abraham. Abraham changed the story, and suddenly the idols lacked power. Change the story, and the circumstances changed too. That's what Abraham and Sarah did. They chose to follow God. They set out on a journey, leaving one reality for another. They used their agency, and in doing so, they ended up changing the story for much of humanity. Abraham and Sarah remind us of our agency. We can meet our goals. We can impact social change. We can do our best to stay vigilant, following the advice of doctors and scientists, doing our part to protect ourselves and each other from this terrible virus. Because it's not inevitable that we'll all get sick. And it's not inevitable that everything will have to shut down again. And on this final Shabbat before the election, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, we can and we must use our agency to vote. In so many ways, it's very simple, like starting a journey, and yet it's profound too. What happens next in our story, it's not inevitable. We, like our ancestors before us, have the agency to affect what happens next. May this upcoming Shabbat, beginning of course tomorrow night, be one of rest and renewal, so that we might continue to use our agency to make all of our stories better. Keni Ratzon, let it be so. Erev Tov.